You guys, hello and welcome to Three Barns of Charm. My name is Leanne and I wanted to pop on here real quick to share with you my latest obsession of rag wreath flags. Aren't they so stinking cute and so timely for this time of year? They just say summertime, don't they? So cute, so easy to do, you guys. I promise you can do this. Anybody can do this. If you can do a little knot tying or a little basting stitch with some glue, I promise you, you can do this. It's super easy. The very first flag we're gonna do is more of a traditional style rag wreath. It's where we're going to cut or rip the fabric into strips and then tie it to our base, which we will be creating out of a Dollar Tree staple. Yes, we are making our own backs. The second style is more of like a basting stitch and creating a ruffle. So then we'll be gluing that to the same style of back that we will be creating for this. But they're both very, very similar, and they both take about the same amount of fabric and about the same amount of time, but really easy peasy on both sides. So if you want to learn how to make either one of these or both, then stick around because I'm going to teach you. All right, well, let's get started making the very first rag wreath flag. I would say that this is more of a traditional rag wreath style flag. It's similar to what maybe you've seen before on, say, Pinterest or the internet, where you're just ripping strips of fabric and you're tying it to a wreath form. But here, what we're going to use is our Dollar Tree cooling racks. They're really inexpensive. I think $1.25 or $1.50. It's hard to keep up with Dollar Tree prices these days. But again, they're just really inexpensive, and you can see that they're not super sturdy. They're kind of thin wire, and there's not a lot of cross support. So it's, you got wire going this way, but you only have a few cross supports down the middle. You can absolutely use any cooling rack that you have. Just keep in mind that you don't want something that has, say, a whole bunch of cross metal supports. You want something that's very I hate to say it, kind of flimsy, so you can cut the supports as you go, or however it is that you want to make yours, and I'll show you how I do that. But again, the cheaper the better when it comes to cooling racks. I guess I could put it that way. You could get them at Walmart or wherever too, but I think that you get a lot of support. So you get what I'm saying. So you don't want a very sturdy wire rack is what I'm getting at. So you will also need another Dollar Tree product here. I believe I got these at the Dollar Tree. If not, I got these at Harbor Freight, which is another inexpensive store. But any wire cutter, heavy duty wire cutter, I know that these are needle nose pliers, but you can see that there is like an edge on the inside that can actually cut wire also. So hopefully you guys can see that. But you'll need a set of those. You will also need something to cut your fabric with into strips. We're going to rip our fabric down the length, but you will also need some scissors, some fabric scissors to cut into strips. You'll also need a ruler or a cutting surface if you choose to cut your fabric instead of rip it. You will need a cutting mat and a you might see a trend here, but this is also, believe it or not, a Dollar Tree find, but you can use any rotary cutter if you decide to not rip your fabric. If you just want to cut it, easy peasy. You'll need one of those. You'll need some snips of any kind, and you'll never guess where I got these. You guessed it, Dollar Tree. Again, inexpensive zip ties, and they're fairly small. It comes in an accessory pack of all different shapes and colors, but I just chose the real small ones. But again, you pick whatever it is that you have or need. And of course, a little bit of tying twine at the end to hang your flag. So let's get started here. I think that's all the supplies. Oh, and well, and some fabric, that would help. And again, guys, I got this at the Walmart, but I believe some of this also came from Hobby Lobby And you guys don't have to go to fabric stores to get your fabric. This was an old jean skirt that I got at the thrift store that I threw in the wash, and I just cut it into pieces. You can see that I've already cut up some of this stuff, but you guys don't have to use actual traditional fabric rolls. You can go to any place that's got fabric or sheets or clothes and cut up as many pieces as you want. So just you can get creative on where you source your fabric. And I just chose a couple of different styles of fabric. I got a couple of, it's hard to tell on camera here, but I chose a very simple cotton cloth, just a basic white, very, very simple, easy peasy. I think I got this at Walmart. And then I chose, and I'm not sure where I got this from, but this is almost like a felt fabric. It's a more soft plush fabric, but again, it still rips. And I just wanted to have a little extra texture. But you guys can absolutely have just one red, one blue, and one white. You don't have to mix and match if you don't want to. I used, believe it or not, I used 4 reds, mainly because I didn't buy enough of the one bandana red that I had. Believe it or not, this was a bandana from Hobby Lobby, and I thought, oh, you know, I don't need that much. I'll just rip it into strips and so on and so forth. But believe it or not, you're going to need a little bit more fabric than you're thinking. I believe the red and the white fabric, you're going to need about I would say 1.25 yards, if not 1.5 yards of each. And then the blue, you're going to need about 1 yard. So, and again, I used, I think 3 different fabrics for the blue. I just put some different textures together, just a very kind of lightweight blue jean material, some stars and stripes. Again, I think I got that at Hobby Lobby, I'm thinking. And then just a blue and white gingham. It's a very light textured fabric. I will say this, guys, the lighter the fabric, the little bit easier this will be. If you chose a very heavy fabric, say an upholstery fabric, you can do that, but it might give you a little bit of a fight. So the lighter the fabric texture and medium, the better. If you're working with really heavy fabrics, like really dense denim, it might give you a little bit more of a trouble tying knots and whatnot. And then, but again, this is one of the fabrics that I got from this was Walmart, and I think these were, 1 yard of it was, I think $5 or something. So I didn't give a whole lot for the fabric, but again, you guys can source your fabrics any place you want. So just putting that out there. All right, well, now what we're going to do is we're going to get started with our cooling racks. And again, you guys, just do the one rack. If you only wanted to just alternate and be done with that, you can absolutely do that. But I went a little extra and cut the bottom off of my second cooling rack, and I'm going to attach it to my first cooling rack, and I'll show you how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're just basically going to cut the bottom 2 rungs off of the bottom of this cooling rack. So we're just going to snip here, 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 and here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your needle nose pliers. You want to cut on the outside, not the inside, because you're saving these two pieces right here. So you're just going to cut right on the outside. And again, it takes a little bit of grip, but it is possible. And there you have it. You basically just took the last 2 rungs off of this here. What we're gonna do is line these up to, and I just put the full rack over top of the and it's gonna sit just like that. See that, guys? But what we need to do is underneath here, you see these little feet, we're just going to bend those up. So we'll take our needle nose pliers, and I'm just going to grab it and just tilt it to the front, meaning just move it that way. Instead of straight up and down, I'm just tilting it just a little bit. And again, I'm just gripping it and moving it just a little bit. So now this wire rung won't bump up against that, and you'll have a better fit. And see how it sits just like that? You guys see that? You're just adding one rung to your wire rack. That's all you're doing. And then you're going to take your zip ties. If you get everything lined up, just like that. And if it's not a perfect match, it's okay, because your fabric's going to cover that. So you just need to line them up as best as you can. And then you're going to take your zip ties. You don't need that anymore. You're just going to take your zip ties. And I recommend when you add your zip ties, when you start adding them to your frame, don't pull them fully tight directly. Like add one, pull it tight, add another, pull it tight. I would cinch it down till it's somewhat tight, and then once you have them all lined up, then you can go back over it and tighten them all down. But if you tighten one down completely, the other side might shift, and then you find that it's not fully matching the way you'd like. So I just kind of get them snug. And you want this piece kind of to the back. So when you go to snug them down, you want the little nub to be on kind of on the back side. But again, it's not a big deal if it's not. The fabric's absolutely going to cover it anyway. So I'm just taking up both pieces, and you're going to put your zip tie. You're grabbing both pieces. You're just grabbing both of those pieces and you're zip tying it down. So again, I'm going to just slip it through. And again, I'm not going to fully tighten it until I got all of my zip ties on, because again, this might shift on you and it might fight you a little bit. So, and then I put one in the middle, and then I'm going to put one here and one here. But you're basically, don't overthink it, guys. You're just attaching the two pieces together. That's all. Again, you're going to have fabric on this, so it's going to hold together no matter what anyway. But this just makes it a little bit easier. Instead of trying to tie the fabric and holding both pieces of the metal rack and then tying, it's just a little bit easier with the zip ties, holding it all together first. And I'm going to go back through, and I'm just going to go, instead of this way, I'm going to catch this rung and this rung. So I'm going to go diagonally this time. And then I'm going to come over here and do these two pieces over here. So I'm going to go this way. And this is the hardest part about this flag and selecting your fabric. Those are the toughest parts. The rest of it is super easy peasy, I promise. Easy peasy. That's what we like. So you just get all of your zip ties on and kind of snug them down a little bit. And then see how this still wants to slide. You want to make sure that you catch the crossbars also, because that's what kind of stabilizes it. So you just want to keep zip tying. So now I'm going to put one right at the end here and right here. So I'm catching this bar and this bar. But there's no right or wrong as long as you're attaching both pieces together and they're not sliding around on you. And then I'm going to put one more right here. Almost done. And you don't have to go super crazy, because the fabric really isn't, like I said, the fabric's going to keep it together also. And then once you have all your zip ties where you want them, then you can just take your finger and your thumb and just kind of pinch it and then start cinching down your zip ties. Just make sure that you have all your, and I'm going to redo this one and catch the crossways. So I'm going to take my little snips, but a pair of scissors can cut those. And I'm going to go this way to catch the top bar on the underside so it doesn't slip around. And again, you just want to kind of pinch your wires together so they're not shifting on you, and just pull tight. And you're just going to pull all of these real tight. And you can even take your needle nose pliers, and if you don't have a good finger grip, just take your needle nose pliers and just start pulling them down. Matter of fact, you can even just flip it over and just start pulling them tight. And that way your bulky pieces of the zip tie are on the back side. I think I'm going to put one more right here, and I'm going to catch that corner and right there. So we'll pinch those. We will be ready to build. All right, and once you have your two pieces zip tied together and you kind of wiggle it around and kind of pull on it to make sure that the two pieces are firm together, then you can cut the tails of your zip ties off. Now make sure you don't cut your zip ties themselves, or you'll have to re-zip tie it. You could absolutely use wire too, or even string, but zip ties are so easy and so quick. So if you don't have any zip ties, you don't have to use zip ties. You can use wire or yarn or string. You can absolutely do. All right, so now, and I put that the added rung at the bottom, but you can absolutely make it a top. It's however, whatever you want to do. Now you get to make your flag any which way you want. What I did was I just split the difference and made my blue field halfway down. But if you only wanted it to be a little bit smaller of a blue field, you could absolutely just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rungs. But I chose to do 6. So this is blue, 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 and blue. So you guys get the picture. And then you start here, red, white, red, white. So this is your first rung of fabric ties, and then you build all the way down. You can do it again, you can do it any which way you want, but I went all the way down to this rung. Now you guys could map it out if you want to. You can put a couple of marker ties at the top and then remind yourself which row is which. That's absolutely a good thing to do. But one thing I do recommend is starting in the middle and working your way out. It's tough to work on the outside in, because by the time you get to the inside of your flag, it gets a little tight trying to tie everything. So ask me how I know. Yep, hindsight's 2020. So absolutely, I would start in the middle and work your way out. You can absolutely do all the blue or red and white, however it is you want to do it. And it really, again, guys, this is not, there's no right or wrong. You don't have to overthink it at all. Even though I like to overthink a lot of things. Just trust me on this one. Just kind of work your way out. Now, what you can do is you can cut all your fabric or tear all of your fabric, mix and match, but I recommend preparing all of your fabric first before you start tying, because it's a little bit more time consuming if you do like a couple of pieces and then tie, and then rip a couple more pieces and then tie. So I would tear or cut a whole bunch and prepare, and then that way you can just kind of sit and watch your favorite movie and just loop or tie your fabric to your frame. Completely up to you, and I'll go over both ways. But that's basically it, guys. It is super easy. I told you this one was super easy. So to prepare your fabric, you don't have to iron your fabric, but if you find that when you open up your fabric and there's a lot of creasing due to folding or hanging on a hanger or whatever it may be, you might want to just quickly just give it a little bit of an iron. But again, we're scrunching or tying these fabric pieces to your frame, so if they're not perfect pressed fabric, it's okay. So, but basically what we're doing is we're cutting or ripping strips of fabric that are about, I would say, about 1.25 inches width wise. Now, the wider you go with your strips, the more coverage it will be for the tie, but also keep in mind that will make a fairly large knot. So if you have kind of mobility issues with your hands, just keep in mind that if you have a pretty wide piece of fabric, it might be a little bit tougher to tie to your wire. So just keep that in mind. If you go real wide with your fabric, it might get a little more chunky. So you don't have to do 1.25 inches. You could go a little bit wider or a little bit narrower. It's completely up to you. But just keep that in mind, that if you have, especially if you have a fabric that's a little bit denser, it can be tough to tie this at a width that is maybe bigger than a 2-inch. So I would keep it in the 1.25 to 1.5 inch width, or even an inch would be great. But again, you guys can make it completely up to you, or rip or cut a couple of pieces and kind of see what is comfortable for you. So I know that that was a lot of information on tying fabric, for goodness sakes. But I wanted to make sure that you guys have the best information going forward. So, but again, what I did is I just cut or ripped. I ripped all of mine, but I like the little frayed edge of ripping fabric. Not everybody likes that. And then when it came to having these little stragglers, I just kind of pulled the little stragglers off, but I left a considerable amount. I like the rag look where it's a little bit more primitive, more country. That's just my idea of cute. But you can absolutely use your rotary cutter and cut your strips, and that way then they're very clean and crisp. So you don't have to rip, but if you do want to rip, it's super fun and easy. So what you want to do is you want to, and I ripped down the full width of the widest part of the yard, if that makes sense. So the longer the strip, the better. That way you can just cut it into 6-inch strips. So this is probably, let's measure it here real quick. Oh, that was probably pretty loud. Sorry about that. But let's see here. Let's put this in. I think this was 44 inches. Yeah, so this yardage, depending on your fabric, if you purchase it at a fabric store and or Walmart in an actual yardage type situation, fabric comes in different widths and lengths, or I should say not widths. Would it be widths or lengths? I'm not sure. Obviously a yard is 36 inches, but the bolt itself could be larger or smaller depending on what you buy. So I think this was a 44, yeah, roughly about a 44, let's see here, 36 by 44. So there you go. So I ripped my strips to the full 44 inches, and then I cut it down into 6-inch sections. You'll have leftover, but you could actually just go the 36 way too. It just depends on what you want to do. But that's how I did it. Was I just ripped down the full length and then just cut it, because that's what you want, is you want 6-inch sections. So you need to take your little handy dandy ruler. And you don't have to have this kind of a ruler. You can use any old ruler you have, and then just what you're going to do is then just rip or cut your strip and then just cut it down. So it's about a 6-inch. Just you're gonna do a whole bunch of those. A whole bunch. Like, I mean, an obscenely amount, big amount of 6-inch strips. I think it's like 1,800 maybe pieces. But again, it's completely up to you on how full you want your flag to be. You can make the strips shorter so that it doesn't puff up as far. You can, so that if you want to save a little bit on fabric, you don't have to make your ties to be, you know, this far off your frame. You can make them a little bit shorter, but keep in mind that if you're doing a traditional tie knot and the loop knot, it gets a little bit tricky trying to catch the piece to pull through your knot, and I will go over that here in a second. But the shorter your strip will be, the harder it will be to work with it. But you can save on fabric. So if you didn't want to buy a whole bunch of fabric for your flag, if you wanted to save on a little bit of fabric, you can cut your strip down to maybe 5 inches or maybe even 4 inches. I'm not sure, I didn't go that far, but just keep that in mind. But mine are 6 inches. So I have 1.25 inches roughly, because this is 1 inch here and then 1/4. So roughly 1.25 inches by 6 inches. But it's not perfect. Yours won't be perfect either. Don't sweat it. They're all going to be crammed together on a metal frame. So if you're worried about your strips not being exactly 1/4 or 1.25 inches by 6 inches, yeah, there's way more things to worry about in life. So I promise you, it looks cute when they're all little different heights too. So I promise you, it's going to be great whatever you do. So consistency is key. Whatever measurement you pick, just stick with that measurement. That's all. And then it'll look purposeful. So just, if you get some that are a little shorter than others or a little narrower than others, that's okay. Just follow that technique down. So, all right. So, and I'll show you real quick how to rip your fabric. And it's easy peasy. I'm sure there's some sewists out there that are way better at this than I am. But all I did, when you first start out, when you're making your first strip or cut, well, with the cut, you can just move forward. You can use the salvage edge, or you can rip a square piece and go forward from there. But if you're ripping your fabric, keep in mind that the first rip might not be square to your original piece of fabric. So a lot of times what will happen is when you make your first, you can cut yourself to start the rip. I just cut into the fabric just a little bit, and then you just literally pull down the piece of fabric. A lot of times that very first rip will kind of meander to one way or the other, and that will be square to the actual stitching. So whoever cut your yardage probably didn't cut it square, whether it would be on the factory or the person that's manning the factory or the fabric counter. It's no harm, no foul. Just know that that very first cut may or may not be square. So then when you go to do your second rip, that's when you can really go in and measure your strips. So say like this is the full length of your fabric, and then you'll just start to eyeball it. But the first one, I just make a snip at 1.25 inches, and then you just rip. Super fun. Very satisfying, especially after a trying day at work. You just come in and rip a bunch of fabric. It's pretty awesome. And then with these little guys, you just want to pull those off because they'll just get in your way. You don't have to worry about all of them. Just take care of a little bit of them. And then once you have your strip of fabric, then you can just go in and cut your 6-inch strip. And then you just want to do a whole bunch of those. So again, you'll need about 1 yard of the blue. You'll need about a 1.25 yards for the red and the white. But again, this totally depends on how thick you want your flag. If you want it to be really dense, you'll need to up the fabric usage. If you don't care that it might be a little bit thinner and not as jammed packed, then you can probably get away with a little bit less. But just know that it'll take a little bit of time to prepare all of your fabric, but that's okay. Just prepare it and then make your little buckets, and then sit down, like I said, and watch your favorite show or movie and just enjoy and just go to town. So all you got to do now, after you get all of your fabric cut up and prepared, like I said, there's two ways to attach your fabric to your metal frame. You can do it the traditional way, just literally tying a knot. And all you're gonna do, and just remember that this is gonna be my square for my blue. So I'm just gonna turn it so I can reach in the middle. And I'm just gonna start in the middle and work my way out. So what you're gonna do, because this is all blue, it doesn't really matter which rung you start with. And then all you're gonna do is tie a knot. Literally just a simple knot. You can tie just one knot like that, or you can tie it again and have it extra secure. I'll tell you this, see how this becomes kind of a flat knot, even with like a second tie. Now see how your fabric gets a little bit shorter, so you kind of have to be careful on that. So if you want to do a double knot, you might want to add your length on your, instead of 6 inches, you might want to add to 7 or even 8. But see how these knots, the fabric lays flat against the frame, which is fine. It's totally fine. That's a particular look that maybe you like. But my concern is, because we're doing red and white stripes, pretend that this is the red, see how that would be overlapping your white, and it might get a little bit more, the stripes won't be as defined. So my solution to that is two things. You could go two different directions, and it's completely up to you. If you only wanted to do one knot, you could get a glue gun, just a simple glue gun, and add a little bit of glue and tack it right at the bottom, right at the base of your knot, and then just stick those two fabric pieces together and let it cool, and then those will be glued together, so they'll sit up a little bit taller. See how they'll look like that? If you don't have a glue gun, or don't want to put in that extra effort, which I did not, because that just adds a little bit of a step, because this project does take a little bit of time. FYI, these little scissors are also from, surprise, Dollar Tree, and they are phenomenal with they're cutting fabric. They cut fabric really, really well. So $1.25 or $1.50, I'm not sure what I gave for them, but really easy peasy. So if you don't have decent fabric cutting scissors, I'm telling you, go to Dollar Tree and get you these tiny little pink handled scissors. They're awesome. They're in the crafts section of Dollar Tree, and they've been in just about any Dollar Tree I've ever been in, and they're spectacular, and they're cheap, so you can't go wrong. They cut fabric beautifully. So the next method, and this is the method that I chose to do, is you're literally super easy peasy. You're going to take your piece of fabric, you're going to loop it and match ends, and you see how you have a loop right here? You're just going to take that loop, go underneath, you stick see the loop there, you're just going to take the ends, grab them with your finger, and just pull taut. That's it, guys. Easy, easy, easy. And see how nicely the fabric stands up from the metal. It becomes such a nice taut tie. I love how that looks, especially when you have your red and white stripes. It really kind of makes a defined stripe. So I recommend the loop method over the tie method, but again, you guys can make this however you want. So And that's it, guys, really. You're just gonna do your blue field, and like I said, work your way out. And then when it's time to do your red and your white, let me cut another strip here. You can, and then when you go to do your red and your white stripes, know that you're gonna have your blue field all the way down to here and then across. And then you'll start your red on the other side. So this will be red, white, red, white, red, white, red. And then this will be all white. This will be all red, and so on and so forth. So you start with red and end with red if you did the add-on, the two pieces at the bottom. Just know that if you choose to only do one, I don't have a, this has actually been modified too, but you get the drift. So if you didn't add the second piece, just know that if you start with red, you'll end with white, unless you kind of combine somehow or add a piece of wire in the middle, and then you can split the difference. But that's it, guys. Super easy, you guys. I told you it was so easy. You're literally just going to take, and again, you just match ends. And there's a loop right there. See how there's a loop right there, guys? You're literally just going to stick it down underneath, open that, just take your finger and go right through that loop. You're going to catch those two ends, and I just take these two fingers and just pull it over the top so it stays flat, and I'm literally just pulling up, and I kind of wiggle it so that knot kind of cinches down, and that's it. You literally just, it's that easy, guys. So easy. And if you do more than one pattern, so like I said, I did several reds. I had this red, I had an actual, just a flat red, and then I had a large checked red. The Hobby Lobby, and I think both of these came, this might have been Hobby Lobby also. I think that was Walmart. But you could probably find this stuff on Amazon as well. So it's literally just, you can alternate. I didn't even alternate. I just randomly put whatever I felt needed to be. So if you look at something, especially if you look at something and you think, what's off about this? I'll give you a little trick. What you do is you take your project and you're like, man, it's not quite right. And this works with paintings, drawings, all kinds of stuff, an outfit. Look in the mirror, take it and hold it up in front of the mirror. And when you look at it from the mirror perspective, you see it with a slightly different vision, and that mistake or the unobvious becomes obvious. So I don't use your words, Leanne, but I think you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. Just if something looks a little off, just take it over to the mirror and look at it in the mirror, and it'll, the area that you're not quite right, you think isn't quite right, it'll jump out at you. So just kind of look at it or squint your eye, and if there's a whole bunch of lighter colored fabric here, just put a solid next to it, and it'll kind of break up that area. So it's literally, don't overthink it. Just kind of make it your own, and yeah, that's all you got to do. So you do red all the way down. The next rung will be white, and you can put some on the crossbars. You don't have to. I think I did here or there. You can even take those crossbars and cut them out if you wanted to. I think the crossbar adds a little bit of structure to the flag, but by all means, you don't have to do it how I did it. So you can put some fabric here. So say this is the red line, you can add, because this is our blue field, so these would all be blue. But this crossbar could be red, then this crossbar could be white, but you're literally building strips. So these would all be white, these would all be red, white, red, and so on and so forth. You guys totally get it. So I promise you can do this. It's easy peasy. Don't overthink it. I will say it takes a little bit of time to do it, but it's so easy. Just prep all of your fabric and then go find yourself a comfy chair and just, people watch or watch a movie, or you know, you name it, and it's awesome. So, and then you have something super cute like this. All right, guys, well, let's get started on the second rag wreath American flag. This is a little bit different technique than we did previous. We are using similar fabrics like the lightweight cotton fabrics. You can use any kind of fabric you want. Just know that you'd want something a little on the lighter side. If you get into like the heavy denims or the upholstery fabrics, it might give you a little bit of trouble once you start scrunching the fabric together. But really any fabric could work for you. The base again will be our Dollar Tree cooling rack. We took two and made one. You absolutely don't have to do that if you don't want to. Just know that if you just use one cooling rack, if you start with red, you'll end up with white at the other side. But if you take the bottom two of a previous cooling rack and zip tie it to the bottom to create one more row, then you can end up with red. So like the traditional American flag, it starts with red and ends with red, and then you alternate between red, white, red, white, red, white, and then you have the blue field here. But again, you guys get to do, this is your flag, you get to make it however you want, but that's just how I did mine. If you want to see how I made this base, this wire rack base, go to the very beginning of this video and I'll timestamp it for you. But basically it's super easy. We're just cutting off the bottom two rows and adding it, zip tying it to another wire rack. If you want to start with red and end with red, you'll need two of those wire racks. If that doesn't bother you to end with white or start with white, then you'll just need one. You also need some decent fabric scissors. If you choose to cut your fabric instead of rip it, I ripped mine because I like the edges to be kind of frayed. But if you don't like that look, feel free to just use a rotary cutter and or scissors. If you use a rotary cutter, you might want to get yourself a self-healing mat. It makes things a little bit easier. To make the cooling rack, if you want to add the second row, you'll need zip ties. You'll also need some needle nose pliers that have the ability to cut. I think I got these from Harbor Freight, but Dollar Tree, I believe I got these from Dollar Tree, and they work perfectly fine as well. Not only will they cut the wire, but they're great for pulling the tails of the zip ties taut. Instead of, if you don't have really good strong fingertips, these work great. Either a pair of regular scissors or some snips to cut the tails off of your zip ties. You'll need a glue gun. Any old glue gun will do, plus some glue. Oh, and a ruler if you want just like a regular ruler. Any kind of ruler will be fine. And I believe that is all you need. There's a couple of extra things you might want to bring, is either like a stitch remover or like a toothpick or something real narrow and pointy to help separate the threads at the end of your fabric to find the bobbin thread. And these are just silicone finger tips. These are great for when we go to do the hot gluing. It'll save your fingertip, and it's also great to wrap the thread around your finger to pull tight, and that way you're not trying to cut your skin. You don't have to bring these, or you don't have to use these, but they come in a 3-pack at Dollar Tree. I've seen them everywhere, and they're great. They're great to have. These little pink handled scissors are, believe it or not, fabulous Dollar Tree find. They cut fabric really well. It's amazing. I bought a whole bunch of them, and they're $1.25 or $1.50. You know, Dollar Tree, it's hard to keep up with their prices these days, but get yourself a pair of these if you want to actually cut your fabric, if you don't have like a traditional pair of fabric scissors. All right, to get started, what we're gonna do, oh, and you'll also need either a sewing machine or just plain needle and thread. And if you don't have a sewing machine, that's okay. You can absolutely just do this with just regular needle and thread. It'll just take you a little bit longer, but it's really, really simple. All you're gonna do is, with your fabric strip, you're just gonna put a basting stitch down the middle all the way down from start to finish. And you're not tying anything off. You're just doing a real basic, like every half inch in, out, in, out, in, out. And you can just weave your thread in and out, back and forth, up, down, up, down. You're just doing a real loose base stitch all the way down. And then we're gonna just scoot our fabric together on that piece of thread. So again, you guys, this is just a cotton thread that this particular fabric, the blue fabric, I got at Hobby Lobby. It wasn't on sale, so I think I gave like $6 for a yard of it. Really inexpensive, but a lot of the fabrics that I picked up, these are all Walmart. This is Walmart. These are all Walmart. I think this is Walmart. I'm pretty sure this is Walmart as well. I got a couple of different white fabrics, one with a little bit of a pattern on it and one just plain white. And again, this is just cotton fabric, really kind of lightweight and easy to tear or cut. This is just a red and white gingham, and it's the Waverly. Matter of fact, all of these from Walmart are the Waverly. This is a red base with white polka dots. Yeah, so those are Walmart, and then I believe I got this at the Hobby Lobby. But again, you can use whatever fabric you would like. If you only want to use one particular red and one particular white with the blue field, that's totally up to that's totally up to you. If you wanted to do a whole bunch of different colors of blue, that's up to you. I chose to do a couple different reds and a couple different whites with just one blue fabric. With the red fabric, you're going to need about a yard of the red, and you're going to need about a yard of the white, and the blue you're going to need about 3/4. So it just really depends, guys, on how thick and dense you want your flag to be. If you want it to be shorter or denser, it just really depends on the cut that you guys do and how much you actually pack into the flag. So it's really, again, up to you on how dense you want your flag to be. You can even shorten your pile a little bit, meaning standing off of, so when we start scrunching our fabric together, mine's gonna stand up about like 3 inches or so, but you guys can make yours shorter or longer depending on the look that you want, and it'll all become clear as soon as we start building. So our strips for our flag, for the blue field, again, I chose to do just one color of blue, one pattern of blue. I only did one fabric. So all of my blue field is going to be the same fabric, but you can alternate if you want or mix and match. It's completely up to you. But my blue strips are 4 1/4 wide by 37 inches long. Okay, so all of my strips that I'm going to be using are 4 1/4 wide. So it's 4 1/4 inches wide this way, and then for the blue strips, I just went to 37 inches. You can go up to 44 inches if you want it to be really dense in the blue. But if you're using a really heavy duty fabric like a denim or something, I would back that dimension off a little bit because it's going to be really thick and bunched up in there. So you don't need to go all the way to 44 inches. So if you wanted to do like a 37 inch long strip because you're using a really dense fabric, that's completely up to you. So that's for the blue fabric, okay? That's for the blue field. Because how I'm going to do mine is I'm going to have my blue field come all the way down, and I'm going to split that wire rack right in half. So right along here and up here, these rows right in here are going to be blue fabric right under here. The rest of my flag is going to have short red and white and long red and white. So over here, so this is going to be our blue fabric here. On this side, we're going to start with red, go to white. Start with red, go to white. So this row right here is going to be red and then white, then red, then white, and then so on and so forth. And then when you get past the blue field, because this will be red, white, red, white, red, white, red. Then the very first long row will be white. So this red up here will be a strip, and you can alternate whichever color of red you want, or you can just pick one and go with it. All the reds are the same fabric. It's up to you. But then our very first red row will be 4 1/4. So let me grab one that's actually 4 1/4. So this row up here, remember this will be blue right here. This first red row will be 4 1/4 by 44 inches. So 44 inches is basically, this yard of fabric that I bought at Walmart is 36 by 44. So I just took the full length of this fabric and cut a 4 1/4 inch strip out of it, and I just ripped it all the way across. So my red and my white strips are 44 inches long, okay? And again, you're going to do the exact same thing you did with the blue. You're going to run a basting stitch. Remember, give yourself a good tail, a good 5-inch tail of thread, and then just do your basting stitch in, out, in, out, in, out, all the way down till you get to the end, right down the middle, and give yourself a tail. Now, you guys, don't overthink this. You really don't have to overthink this. Oh, I need to know exactly the middle. If you feel that you really need to know exactly the middle of your 4 1/4, you can absolutely fold this over and iron it and give yourself a little bit of a crease. So you can just iron it real quick with an iron. That way you have a little bit of a crease running down the exact middle of your strip, and then you can just follow that crease and sew that crease. I didn't do that. I just winged it. That's kind of how I roll. I didn't measure it even. You could even run like a chalk line down the middle. I find that is a little overkill, if you ask me. This is just a rag wreath. It's supposed to be a little messy and so cute. So don't worry about the specifics of if it's right in the middle or if it's not in the middle, because this is going to be folded over. Remember, this fabric is going to be folded over, and it's going to be bunched just like this. So you're not going to be able to tell really if your sides are even or not. The only way you might tell is if you have a fabric that has a wrong side, a really obvious wrong side to it. And even at that, when you fold it over and scrunch it up, you're still not going to really tell. You can fold it that way, or you can fold it this way. But it's all going to be scrunched up like this. So you really don't have to worry about it being exactly in the middle, but you can absolutely iron it halfway, put yourself a little crease, and then just sew the crease. You can absolutely do that, but I did not. So with your red, I did, and I'll put this on the screen. For the red, you're going to need four short strips that are 44 inches scrunched up. So you're going to need 4 1/4 by 44 inches. And then once you get past that blue field, you're going to do long runs of red also. So you're going to need 3 4 1/4 by 88 inches. So what you're going to do is you're going to rip or cut, depending on your style, you're going to rip a couple of strips that are the same width roughly, and then you'll just sew them. You'll just baste stitch those together. And again, you guys, you don't worry about trying to sew them first this way and then baste it. Don't worry about it. Just run your basting stitch all the way down, and then once you get to the next piece, just kind of stick them together, just hold them with your thumb, and then just keep basting. The thread is just there to kind of help with the scrunching. It's honest and true. You don't have to worry about, making it pretty and perfect, because it's all going to be just scrunched up anyway. So for the red, you're going to need 4 shorts to go over here, because remember, the blue field is here. So you're going to need 4 shorts here for your red, and then you're going to need 3 longs for down here. And with the white, exact same thing as the red, except you only need 3 shorts, not 4. You're going to need 3 shorts that are 4 1/4 by 44 inches. And then you're going to need 3 4 1/4 by 88 inches down below underneath the blue field. And this is all going to make sense to you guys, I promise. I'll put this on the screen for you guys. But you're going to have shorts up here for the blue. You're going to have shorts up here for the red and the white. And then the full field down here, you'll do the long. So shorts, shorts, and long. All right, so now what we're going to do is I'll show you how to rip the fabric if that's what you want to do here. So let me put my fabric to the side here. And I'll take this is one of my scrap pieces. I'll take your ruler or your measuring stick, whatever it is that you want to measure with. And if you're going to cut your fabric with a rotary tool or your scissors, just measure and cut like you normally would. You don't have to worry about getting it square. You just use that edge that came from the factory or the counter, the factory or the fabric counter. You don't have to worry about it. But if you're going to rip, just know that the very first rip that you are going to cut, say if this was a fresh open package, like I just opened this up and this is a full yard, the edge that they give you on both sides may or may not be square. And what I mean by that is when you first go to rip a piece of fabric, you might want to run a test rip first about 1 inch deep, and you just kind of get it started, and then you just rip. But see how, and this is what I'm talking about, see how there's 1 inch here, but once the rip starts, it gets more narrow and more narrow. That's because this yardage didn't come square. So this is going to rip on the square. So just give yourself a practice cut or rip all the way down, and that way then that'll start your first strip. So that ended short, so you might want to give yourself even like a 2 inch, cut into a 2 inch, and I'll do it again just so we have a square rip. And it's super easy and it's very satisfying, especially after a long, stressful day. You just come home and rip a bunch of fabric. So, and then just pretend like this is a full yard of fabric. So this is the full yard of fabric. So then you would just line up and get your measurement of 4 1/4, and we'll look at that. That's 4 1/4 just about. So then you would take your, say if there's more fabric over here, I would just get a little snip, and then you just rip that, and then you have a 4 inch strip right down. It's a little messy. You can cut these little strings off, and this got a little jagged at the end. You can cut that down. You can take your rotary tool and just cut that down. Now if you have a salvage edge that's very obvious, you might want to cut that off as well. Some of the fabrics that I had, the salvage kind of blended. It had some wording on it, and I just cut that off. But this salvage is very obvious, and I didn't particularly want that in my flag, so I just snipped that off. And you can take a pinking shears and cut it off, or you can just cut it off with regular pair of scissors, just like that, and then you can toss that. So then if you have a bunch of little stragglers, you're going to want to cut those off also. Although you don't spend a lot of time cutting this stuff off, because it's going to kind of like fray and be cute. So don't spend a lot of time trying to cut off all the ragged edges, especially if you like that more country or primitive style. I mean, it is a rag wreath flag after all. That's how you prep all your fabric. So let's go over to the sewing machine, and I'll show you how to sew on the sewing machine. Okay guys, so now that I'm at the sewing machine, I went ahead and cut off the salvage edge with some peeking shears, and I just cut that white strip off. But depending on your fabric, especially if you have a fabric that doesn't have a wrong side, Like this white is the same on both sides. So you can hardly tell where the salvage edge is. So now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna run, just like we did if you were to hand stitch, we're just gonna run a very long basting straight stitch all the way down the middle of our fabric. And I have my machine set to the longest straight stitch that I have. Nothing fancy, not zigzag, just a straight regular old stitch. And I'm gonna start right in the middle, and yes, I'm just gonna eyeball it. I'm not gonna measure. I'm just going to just sew straight all the way from start to finish. Now, if I was doing, this is just a short, this is gonna be a short one, so this is only the 44-inch strip. But if I were to do a 88-inch strip, then we would tack two together. Now just pretend like this was another red, and I would just be sticking it to the end. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show you a little secret or a little hack I just learned not too long ago, thanks to, I think it was TikTok, and I forget the lady's name that was sharing her little secret. You don't need a ruffle foot to sew a ruffle into your fabric. You can absolutely just raise the tension on your machine, or right where the thread comes off the spool, you can just pinch the thread between your fingers and create tension that way, and then it'll, let me show you. So what I'm gonna do is I have everything set up, ready to go. My pressure foot is on the fabric. I'm gonna go ahead and just very gently create some tension, and I'm gonna run that right off the spool. It's gonna run right between my thumb and my finger, and I'm just pinching it. And I'm just gonna press down the presser foot and just start sewing. And you'll start to see a ruffle being created. I'll do a little bit more, it's hard to tell. But you can see now how that there's a ruffle starting to be made. And then we're going to create an even heavier duty ruffle, but this is a great start, so you let the machine do the work. So see what I mean by hand stitching is fine, that's great, just take you a little bit longer, but with the sewing machine, man, it just goes just like quick. So just right between your thumb and your pointy finger, just pinch it tight and just let the fabric run right through. And I'm not sewing any crazy stitch, it's just a straight stitch right down the middle of my strip of fabric. Right down the middle. And then if I was sewing a long strip, because remember we have red and white shorts and we have red and white longs. So the shorts are 44 inches, which is what this strip is. But if I needed to do a long strip of red, then I would take my second, pretend that this is not white, that this is red. So I'd be, if I wanted to make an 88 inch, then all I would do is take my fabric all the way to the end, and just right before the presser foot gets to the end, you put your needle, you can either turn your machine wheel down so your needle goes through the fabric that way manually, or if you have a handy dandy button to press to catch that last bit of thread, then you just hold it with your fingers down and you raise up your presser foot, and you're going to add that second strip right over the top. Just an overlap of just a real short, and you just want to match up this side and this side. Then you're going to put your presser foot down. Remember to pinch your fabric, and then you're just going to sew on. You don't need to do any knots. You don't do any back stitching. You just add one and two together to get your longs. And then you want to make sure you give yourself enough of a tail, and you just pull it out, and then you have a cute little ruffle. Isn't that cute? So then what we'll do is we're going to take the this is where your pointy stick, your thread cutter or your toothpick will come in handy, because it's hard to tell on camera, but the threads are twisted up. So you're going to want to take that bottom thread, that bobbin thread, you're going to separate the threads, and you want that bottom thread, and you're going to hold on to it, and you're just going to start sliding your fabric, and you're just bunch. You're just going to start bunching up that fabric, and then we'll measure it up to our rack. But that's all, guys. Super easy. I'll show that again. I'll do this white one. It'll be a little bit harder to see because it's white thread with white fabric, but you're just getting right at the start. Again, the longest straight stitch your machine can do, and then thumb and forefinger just pinch it snug so you create that tension, and you just start sewing. Just sew right down the middle. Then you start creating a ruffle, guys. It's so cute. So cute. What a great hack. A little shortcut. And remember, don't cut your threads straight away. You want to give yourself a nice long tail to hold on to, and then cut. And there you have it. A cute little ruffle, and all we're going to do is add to the bunching. We're just going to bunch. Great hack, right? All right, guys, so now that we have all of our strips cut and sewed the way we need, we are going to now add them to our frame. But we're going to take our ruffles, and again, we cinched them up to fit the space that they go in. With the blue, we're just going to fit inside of this square. So we just need these to sit inside. We want them to just stretch from this bar to this bar. So we know that it's going to go in the upper left-hand corner. So what we're going to do is I'm going to flip this around just to make it easier on myself, is we're going to put our fabric underneath our frame, and we're just going to pull this ruffle up through. Now there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can pull it up through so that the blue is on the inside. So you're just kind of play with it, and you're just going to pull see the seam where our seam is, see where our thread is. We're going to put that metal bar, and that metal bar is going to run right along our seam. So we're just matching seam to our thread. So you can have it so that the blue is on the inside, kind of like that, or you can flip it and put the wrong side down and put your metal over the top. Get our little stringies out of the way. And do the same technique, just matching seam to metal. And you're just going to poke that up through. So then when you close up the ruffle, you're going to cinch it up just like that. And I think that's pretty cute, so I think that's how I'm going to do mine. Or you can alternate, actually. If you wanted to do one on the wrong side, one on the right side, you could absolutely do that as well. So, but all you're going to do is start at one side of your strip or the other, and you're just going to poke your fabric up through, and you're just lining up that seam against, here's where our seam is. We're basically making a little fabric taco, and you're just going to wrap the metal bar with our fabric. Take my little threads out of there. And you're going to take a little bit of hot glue, and you're going to put it on one side of your fabric, and then you're just going to squish it closed. But you want to make sure that your seam is right along that metal. You're going to take your little bit of hot glue and just pinch. Let that cool, and you're going to just work your way all the way down your strip of fabric. And I'm going to put some at the base. Get my little stringies out of the way. I'm going to put some at the base, and then I might even tack some right at the top to kind of help close it even more. But you want to make sure that you get your seam right up where the metal is. And I'm just running a bead of hot glue, and then you just close. And then you're going to let that cool. It just takes a second. And then you start creating a ruffle. So you're just going to work your way down. Now if your fabric gets caught on this cross wire, just take a pair of scissors and just snip that fabric that's right in there. So if that bugs you, you can just, right when you get to that, just snip your fabric and make sure that you got your fabric strip even on both sides. So I need to move mine down just a hair. And you want to make sure that you keep your ruffle ruffled. So that looks pretty good right there. So I'm going to cut my fabric. I'm going to cut me a strip right in the middle. I'm going to flip this over. And I'm going to cut right to the seam. Right where that metal crossbar is. I just cut right in. Now don't cut your strip or don't cut your seam. You're just cutting the ruffle on the side of the seam. That way, when you flip it back over, your fabric will poke up through a little bit easier. And it just kind of wraps around. See how now that there's a split there, you can close that now. I'm going to cut my threads a little bit shorter since we don't need them. And you're just going to run a hot bead glue and then just close the ruffle. Run a hot bead glue and close the ruffle. And that's, you're working your way all the way down to the end. You just want to make sure that you get your ruffle even on both sides. Don't burn yourself. It gets a little hot. The glue can kind of squish through the fabric a little bit. So if you want to use your little silicone fingertips, those really help. And again, I'm just running my hot glue right down the middle. And just glue and pinch. This is a neat little Dollar Tree find too. I think this is for hot tools. It basically, if you use a curling iron and then when you're done, you just wrap it up, but it's great for a hot glue gun. I just let it sit. Just keep running that bead all the way down. Just glue and pinch. And you just gonna want to pull the fabric up as well as when you push it shut, so you don't have a lot of fabric on the back side bagging down. Bagging down? I don't even know if that's a word. But you know what I mean. You don't want it to be all saggy on the bottom side. So you're pulling that fabric taut up against, when I'm gluing, I'm also pulling my fabric that way. So I pinch when I glue it, I'm going to pinch it and pull it that way. So I'm pulling it taut up against the metal. And we start getting a cute little ruffle, guys. So cute. Just glue and pinch, and then if you want to go back through and kind of pinch some of this a little bit tighter, you can. If there's too much of the wrong side showing, just add a little bit more glue further up the fabric and just pinch, and that way then it kind of closes the gap a little bit. But again, you guys get to make your flag however you want. Just kind of go back through, kind of close it up. But I recommend putting all of your pieces together and then go back through and kind of zhuzh it. And so then you'll go ahead then and add all of your blue. So the next rung will be blue, and then so on and so forth. So I did 7 blue. So my blue will go all the way down to here. And actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just match ends to ends. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just snip my piece so I know what actually the middle is. I think that'll work out great. So I'll just cut one side and then cut the other. But again, don't cut your seam. You're just cutting the fabric. So now you know which is halfway. And I'm gonna add my fabric to this rung, the second rung now. I'm just going to run a bead glue and close up the fabric. Coming together, guys. Looking cute. Looking so cute. So cute. I think this one I did 2 with the wrong sides up. I think I'm going to do a right side up this time just to kind of change things up a little bit. Again, I'm going to put ends together, find the middle of my strip here, and then cut slits on either side to alleviate that fabric. But remember, don't cut your seam. Losing my ruffle, so we want to go back and pull that ruffle. Looking cute, guys. Looking super cute. Trust the process. I'm just pinching the fabric from underneath. I find that is a little bit easier than trying to pinch it from the top. And I'm still pushing the fabric up against the metal grate. I'm just kind of pinching it from underneath until it cools. And then I go back and cut off the little straggler threads. once you have all of your blue ruffles glued on, then go back through and grab all of your loose threads. And I kind of alternated. I had some right sides facing up, I had some right sides facing down, and I don't really think that it made a whole lot of a difference look wise. I think it just depends on what you like personally. Once you have your blue field glued on, then you're just going to go ahead and start doing your stripes. You can start on one side or the other, it really does not matter. But just so you know that I'm going to start with red and then alternate white, red, white, red, white, red. And I have several different patterns. I have two different reds. I have the bright red and I also have the gingham, so I'm going to alternate those as well. So not only am I alternating red, white, but my reds will alternate and my whites will alternate. And I'm going to start with my bright red first. And same exact process as it was before. So decide whether you want your right sides facing up or you want your wrong sides facing up. Completely up to you. And then just go ahead and start gluing down and just build it all the way down. And then remember that you'll do your long lengths on the bottom. So my first long run will be white, and it's going to run right next to the blue and right on down. And because this is the top one, I only need one slit to go over this bar because there's no bar on this side. So the white one I'll have to have 2 slits, but this one I only have to have 1. So I'm going to fold this over, find middle again, and cut 1 slit on this side, Find that slit. Pull that up through. And this slit up on this side. Just make sure that seam is following that metal bar. Once again, go ahead and just run your bead glue and fold it over like a taco. And again, you want to pull that fabric tight, wrap tight around that metal bar. You want to make sure it's in the middle. I didn't get it quite in the middle, so I had to pull it apart to re-glue it. And the fabric really kind of hides any imperfections. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the rest of that side. And now I'm going to go ahead and add a white to the next row. And this time you definitely want to slit on both sides because of that crossbar. Find that middle. I'm just going to put that right up in the middle. Make sure you get that seam right on that metal. Get everything even. And run your bead glue. I recommend just doing a little bit at a time, or at least a half at a time, like a section at a time, instead of running a full bead all the way down, because it might cool on you before you get your fabric pinched up. So you want to make sure that you get good contact while that glue is warm. And I'm just pinching from behind. You can always go back and add a little bit more glue where you need it. But I recommend building and then go back and fluff it up where it needs to be. And then you can even glue the red to the white when necessary. But I'm going to build mine first before I do that. Go to the right rung, which is over here, and not this one, it's this one. Be very careful on remembering which rung you're on. And double check, triple check before you glue anything down. But if you do glue it on the wrong one, just make sure you get it right away so the glue doesn't it doesn't set on you all the way. Meet sides, make sure that everything is good. We're right in the middle. And again, I'm just pinching from behind. You guys, look how cute it's looking. I'm getting mesmerized. So cute. Make sure your seam is right underneath that wire. Put your glue down. And fold over. Just like a little taco. Little fabric taco. And now the next one is obviously white, but like I said, I have two different whites. So now I have a bright white. So now I'm going to add the bright white right next to the fluffy red. So I'm going to tidy up my fabric strip here. I'll cut my tails a little shorter just to help me out a little bit. I'm not going to cut them all the way. I'm going to find that middle with my finger and my thumb. And I'm just going to guide that right over that crossbar right there. I'm going to take this side and do the same. Match seam to the wire rack. Just poke up through. And if you didn't get middle quite right, you can absolutely cut yourself another slit to go over that bar. So if you find that you have too much fabric over here and not enough over here, feel free to just adjust. Now we will put a red right here, and I'm going to repeat this red. So it will be this red, and then the next red I use will be this red. So it'll be this bright red right here within my frame, which it does. Fold it in half, find roughly center, and cut my slits. And I think once again, I'm going to have right sides facing up like I did with the first one. I think that's going to be cute. So I'm going to find where my slits are. Put my finger and my thumb right there. And we'll find the right rung, which is right next to the white. I'm just using my fingers, just kind of pushing that fabric up through. Might be easier to flip it over and see. Just making sure I get everything squared up. It's a little bit easier to kind of see that seam on the bottom side. Now we're going to flip it back over, line it up, and glue. And now I'm going to go back to the darker white. So it was bright white. The first was a darker white with a pattern, and then this is the bright white, and now we're going to go back to the pattern, darker white. Getting close to that stitch, you just don't want to cut your stitch. So put your finger and your thumb right there, and then you're going to line it up with that next crossbar. Now that all our short layers are glued on, we are now going to do the remaining long layers. And it's the exact same technique as before. So this time I have a double, so I have two 44-inch strips sewn together. So this was 88 inches stretched all the way out, and we scrunched it up. It's two pieces sewn together, so you know that that is your center. So that you won't have to cut a slit for, but you will have to split each of the two halves. So that way then you'll just do the same technique to go over this bar. So you'll just, so you know you already have the center between the two pieces, so then you'll just do the same as you did the ones up there. So the bar's right here, so I'm just going to cut my slit right there. And right on the other side. Same thing over here. My bar is right here, so I'm just going to cut. And again, that's a little heavy on that side, so I'm going to cut a little bit to the right on this one. Cut right above it. And now we're ready to glue. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and tuck from the back side, because I find that that's a little bit easier, especially with all this fabric that we're building. It's getting pretty dense and it's kind of hard to see a little bit. Well, it looks like we have a little straggler here, so that goes back up there, just like that. All right, let's find center right there, so we know that that's center, and that's going to go right in the center bar right there. We're going to tuck that half right down through there, and then this half, this quarter, will go on this side. Make sure all those little pieces go down in there. Flip it back over. Oh my goodness, it's so cute. And then just make sure you fix each section so everything is right lined up. See how the seam is right on the metal all the way down. Your fabric isn't being folded over. Get all the sections lined up. All the way to the end. Everything is ready to go. And just start gluing. Oh my gosh, you guys. And then if you want to attach the stripes to each other, you can absolutely do that. So you can just go in and do a little glue in between and just pinch the red to the white just so they don't separate on the ends. I don't really think you need to do it in the middle because it's pretty dense and it's holding it to each other. It's just because the red is folding over on the end. Just attach it to each other. And then go ahead and get all the little stragglers that you want off. And the glue, the little glue strings. You guys, look how cute this is. I'm in love. Whew, this is so cute. So cute. Told you it was easy, easy peasy. Just needed to take a little bit of time. Then you can go back and fluff up. Rows need a little extra attention. But look how cute this is, you guys. Oh my goodness, you guys. That is so stinking cute. How cute. I'll put a little bit of glue right in here. A hole right there. I love all the different textures and all the different colors. Put a little bit of glue up here. But this is so cute. So cute. Oh my goodness, you guys. And then you'll just take your twine. Just take a little bit of twine and attach it to the back. And when you attach your twine, you'll want to attach it to the end right here. Cut you a piece of twine. Just take a simple knot. Just tie it. And depending on how tall you want your twine, if you want it to just be in the back, you can make it real short, or you can make it a little bit taller so it'll hold up here like that if you want to put a bow on it. Guys, look how cute that turned out, you guys. It is so cute. Could you imagine this on your front door? If you did want to put this on your front door, you would definitely want to spray some sort of sealer over the top real nice, and just, you know, like in a Krylon or something, where you would it would protect the fabric a little bit better. If you're putting it on your outside door, I wouldn't recommend having it out maybe in the rain. That probably wouldn't be great for the fabric, but you could definitely put it on your front door if it's behind like a protective glass. So you guys, so cute. I told you you could do it. Super easy, super fun. And I just love how these turned out. So darling. You guys, I knew you could do this. I told you you could do this. These turn out so stinking cute. I just love how these look. They're all farmhouse and so charming, you guys. Super, super cute. Could you imagine this on your front door or over your mantle with a little extra decorations or even a bow at the top, you guys? I just love how these look. Hey, by the way, which one did you do? Did you do the traditional style, or did you try the basting stitch style? I want to know. Or did you do both? Put it in the comments below which style you did, and I'd love to see photos. Send me photos how your flag turned out. I would love to see it. You guys, thanks so much for coming along today on this crafting journey. I enjoyed every single moment of it, and feel free to like and subscribe, and maybe even share this video with someone you think might want to make one of these too, because they're going to want to make one after they see yours. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you in the next video.